Jesus came to this earth with his revolutionary message of God's kingdom, a kingdom which is accessible by faith, one that requires loving obedience to God the Father, as well as loving service to brothers and sisters in God's family, indeed to every member of humanity. Love is its main commandment, a love that Jesus spelled out in his Sermon on the Mount, a love that fulfilled the 10 Commandments. The controlling attitude and behaviour then is to be compassionate, to demonstrate love in action, to provide caring concern for others, all of which are modelled by Jesus himself. Jesus flawlessly reflects his Father's nature, not just the divine holiness, but the divine heart. And although he is without sin, he is able to be sympathetic with all those who are seen as sinners. And that just about includes all of us, doesn't it, really? But Jesus also showed compassion whenever he encountered those who needed healing, be it physical, mental or spiritual. He had compassion for children. He said, "Let the little children come to me," especially when the disciples didn't want them anywhere near. And the disciples' reaction always reminds me of the Victorian saying that children should be seen and not heard. But Jesus wasn't like that. He'd grown up with younger brothers and sisters, and he very likely had to do his fair share of looking after them and perhaps teaching them things. And so he was delighted to have children gather round him. Indeed, he even saw them as being models of faith, for in Matthew he says, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." And so we all need to be kind to our children, to welcome them, to listen to them, to look after them, to be compassionate. Jesus also had a compassion for women, which when you look at the patriarchal society of Israel, it's really amazing. Women were seen as second-class citizens or even less. They were treated as being inferior to men, both in social and religious settings. They were the ones who looked after the home and the children. And in some societies today, that still holds true, doesn't it? And then back then, a man could divorce his wife, but it was very difficult, if not impossible, for a woman to divorce her husband. And yet, Jesus was compassionate towards them. He showed interest in them, talked to them, interacted with them, was sensitive to their needs, as well as, of course, the needs of men. You may remember that Jesus allowed the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years to touch the hem of his cloak and be healed. He felt the healing power leave him and asked who it was, and when she revealed herself, he was not angry and just said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And then there is the scene with Martha and Mary. Mary was sat listening to Jesus and all that he was saying, while Martha was busy preparing food. And she wanted Jesus to get Mary to help her. But instead, he gently chastised her, saying, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." So Jesus was saying, yes, it's good for Mary to sit and listen to me. And so he was just upending all the traditional beliefs of the day. And then, of course, there are all the widows, the prostitutes, and don't forget the woman at the well. He was compassionate with all of them. He allowed women to be his followers, and along with the 12 disciples taught them all about God's love and grace. And all of this turned Jewish tradition upside down. No wonder the scribes and the Pharisees didn't care for him too much. But as well as having compassion for children and women, he has compassion for all those who live on the edge of society, all those who do not seem to have a purpose in life, the lame, the hungry, the poor, the oppressed, even tax collectors. And while he was rightly concerned about those people and all those who live in poverty, he is also concerned for those who do not yet have a relationship with God, all of those who are spiritually hungry. And there are many people today who are seeking something in their lives, something spiritual, and they can find this in a relationship with Jesus, by reading the Bible, by praying, or by sitting in his presence and just letting the Holy Spirit fill them with God's love, with God's grace and God's mercy. And so Jesus has compassion for each and every one of us. He knows that we're weak, that we are quite often easily swayed by other people, especially those who have the loudest voice. But he sees each one of us as precious individuals who are made in his image. He sees each one of us as his child, he will always welcome with open arms, whom he loves unconditionally. Believing in Jesus offers us a way of life that is full of hope, full of love, full of compassion. He gives all these things freely to us, and in return asks only that we show this way of life to all those we meet. We show compassion to them. We show them love. We offer them hope of a better life that can be found by following Jesus. God bless.